This video was created by VinylicPuma of VinylicPumaGaming. What's going on, everybody? This is VinylicPuma, and today there isn't really much gaming news, and with Puma Thoughts I usually talk about gaming news, but instead I kind of want to do something a little bit different and talk about the new Wolfenstein The New Order game. So let's go ahead and get started. So this won't be a review per se, this is just going to be my thoughts on the game. You may agree, you may disagree. If you do disagree or agree with me, be sure to leave that in the comments. But what I'm going to go ahead and do now is I'm going to talk about some of the negatives, and then as we get toward the end of the video, we'll get to the positives and leave off on a good note. So let's go ahead and get started. So one of the things that bothered me about Wolfenstein The New Order is just the sheer size of the game. It's 44 gigabytes on PC. I believe it's something similar on consoles. And this was the first title that, with Steam at least, that I actually went to the store to get a physical copy as opposed to downloading it from Steam. I figured if I tried to preload the game the day before it came out, I probably wouldn't be able to play it until 2, maybe 3 days after, and that's with straight downloading. I also do some things on Twitch, and it just wouldn't have worked out, so I had to get a physical copy of the game. And really, along with this large download size, I don't understand why it's so big, considering that some of the textures in the game aren't really up to snuff. Particularly on some of the gun models. Now, this isn't to say that they're like god-awful or anything, but it just seems like for a game that's 44 gigabytes, I mean, what is all of that data for if the gun models and even some of the textures are kind of popping in? Like, don't you think it would be a little more streamlined? I don't know. Another thing that kind of bothers me is how it's glaringly obvious that the PC version wasn't very well optimized. I did mention, of course, a little while ago about the texture pop-ins, but simple things like full screen windowed doesn't work. Like if you try to do like borderless window changing, no luck with that. Go try somewhere else. Another thing that also I thought was kind of interesting that didn't even make it into the game was FOV. The FOV only goes to 100, and of course it would have been nice to have at least a stock FOV of 110. Now, maybe there's a way to set up console commands in Wolfenstein The New Order to where you can go beyond the typical field of view, but something about that seems unlikely. Now, the second two things, the first thing doesn't really bother me, but the second one really does. First thing is no multiplayer, which to some people, that's going to be a big deal. To me, not so much. But the second thing after that is that there's going to be no mod tools, or at least right now there are no current plans for mod tools for this game, which is a real shame because Wolfenstein is a game that's been known to pioneer in the first-person shooter genre, or at least the franchise has been. And the fact that there's no mod tool to where I could go shoot Nazis on, say, Saturn, or I could shoot Nazi zombies is a real shame. And I feel like that would have really brought more life to this game. Now, as far as DLC, I've been doing some searching on the internet and really haven't found anything on that. Now, it's very likely they're probably going to be coming out with some kind of DLC for this game. For them to have a big release and then just not do anything afterwards is sort of unusual. Whether that's an expansion pack, maybe a year or two down the road, we'll see. So now I want to talk about the more positive aspects about Wolfenstein The New Order. Contrary to what I've said before, where I've just kind of negatively bashed the game, now we're going to really talk about the positive aspects of the game that I really liked. The first thing being that really this game reminded me, especially in times with its campiness from a storytelling perspective, of Inglorious Bastards. There are times that you can almost feel like, by watching some of the cutscenes, that this is what they were going for. And even B.J. Blazkowicz's character is very much like I forgot his first name. It's something Apache from the Inglorious Bastards. And so that was really nice to see this here, and to where they made this game, instead of it being super serious, very plot driven, it has a very serious focus, but there's also just some silliness in there. Another thing I really liked is the secret Wolfenstein 3D level that you can find in the game. It was really nice to see this, and most games that are coming out today don't feature things like this. And mainly that's either due to, I guess, that their franchise doesn't have a really established legacy. I don't know. What would have been kind of cool is if they had expanded this into games like Return to Castle Wolfenstein, or you get the idea. Now, in about the 6 minutes that I have talked about this game, I haven't really mentioned much about the gameplay, and that's probably the most important aspect of the game. I would like to say that I found the gameplay to be very varied, and for a single-player game, there was a lot to do. First off, there are 2 different timelines. The levels are pretty much similar, but I will say that some of the way that you solve the levels and solve some of the puzzles within these levels are very different between the different timelines you can choose. Another thing I liked was that the turret levels weren't really boring. Now, the first area, which is you're in 1946, there's a turret on a mounted airplane, or that's mounted on an airplane. That was sort of meh, but what I really liked is there's an area where you go to basically a concentration camp, and you basically free a bunch of prisoners in this concentration camp with this giant mech. And you pilot it and you blow up Nazis. Now, I mainly played most of this game on a controller because that's how I like to play FPSs that are mainly that use a lot of ADS, aim down sights and stuff. And really, I found that the console controls for the game were perfect. Now, there was a weird thing where you can kind of like duck under objects and shoot under them, or you can shoot over them. Not like the typical cover system, but there was this function, and the way it was laid out on the controller was weird. But I did find that in about the 20 hours that I've put into this game, that this really wasn't a problem, and I didn't really use this that much. As far as some of the unique weapons in the game, I found them very varied. I really liked the assault rifle and how it had a rocket launcher attachment. Blowing up Nazis with rocket launchers is awesome. I also really liked how there was another weapon that was kind of like a sniper rifle that also doubled as a laser rifle. The pistols were basically burst fire until you put on the silencer, and what I also liked is that the shotgun had not only a typical shotgun rounds, but it also had these pellets that could ricochet off walls and deal a lot of damage to Nazis. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did like the video, please be sure to rate, comment, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. It really helps me out. Otherwise, I guess I'm going to see you guys later. And take care, guys, and have